Welcome back, everybody. Joe Concha filling in for Steve Malzberg, Newsmax TV, Newsmax Radio. Thanks so much for being with us on this Friday afternoon. Judy Miller coming up in a moment. She's only won a Pulitzer. She's only a Fox News contributor, and she's got a lot to say of what's going on in the media today. We're going to talk about the Jana Winter case, something that a lot of people aren't talking about. Also, lots to do as far as the Lara Logan piece on 60 Minutes, lots to talk about there as well. But joining me now is the aforementioned Judith Miller, my friend from the old show Fox News Watch. I can't believe it's already past tense. Judy, thanks so much for being here.
Nice to be with you.
How's your Friday going?
Oh, very well, thank you.
Okay, good. Judith, I don't know if a lot of folks really know the true measure of your background as far as spending 85 days in jail. That happened a couple of years ago for your refusal to testify and reveal a source. Now we have Jana Winter, Fox News, a case that not a lot of people are, I thought more in media circles where I work, in the Mediaites of the world and on the reliable sources of the world and on the media buzzes of the world, that this would be a bigger case. And I don't hear about it as much. Why don't you fill the folks in exactly what Ms. Winter's up against as far as what's going on in the courts and what kind of precedent this could set for reporters moving forward?
Okay, Steve. Well, basically, Jana Winter is a young reporter at Fox News who just breaks a lot of news and makes a lot of stories. And she was out in Colorado for the James Holmes shooting incident.
The Aurora movie.
Exactly,
movie
the Aurora movie massacre, where he was dressed up as Batman and
Joker.
went in and, exactly, Joker, right? And I'm getting my cartoon characters confused here. And she disclosed the fact, and it was a world-class scoop, that he had sent a notebook that he had written with stick figure drawings and a kind of plans for what seemed to be this movie attack. He had sent that to his psychiatrist at the University of Colorado, and that envelope had sat on her desk for a week unopened. And she disclosed this fact, although the judge had put a gag order on all of the evidence relating to this case. And judges tend to get very annoyed when law enforcement officials and others talk to the press in violation of their gag orders. And so they began in trying to investigate this leak, who had leaked her information. They interviewed about 17 different law enforcement officials. Every one of them said, no, it wasn't me. And then they decided that the only way to find out who leaked her the information was to ask her, put her on the stand, and demand that she give up the source of that information. Well, she's not going to do that. She's an investigative reporter. Anybody in this business, as you well know, knows that we live and die by our sources. If, they're wrong, we're wrong, but without them, we're nothing. We have no news. So she has taken the position that she's not going to talk, and she'll go to jail if necessary to protect her sources. By the way, this is such a diversion from the fact that James Holmes is out there still not being tried. I mean, the trial doesn't get underway again until January 3rd, 2014.
No, it's a month from now.
Yeah, it's a sideshow. It's a distraction from what should be the trial of this terrible person.
My goodness. Judith, and we're here with Judith Miller, Fox News contributor, Newsmax contributor, Pulitzer Prize winner. Had to go to jail for 85 days herself for not revealing a source. Judith, is this not getting as much press? I tend to think if Jana Winter worked for ABC News or CBS News, for some reason this would be bigger on the radar. You think because Fox is kind of, for instance, the president or Valerie Jarrett said, no, that's an illegal, not illegal, but an illegitimate news organization. And some people look at Fox like, you know what, if it's a Fox reporter, fine, let him go to jail. You think that because it's a Fox News reporter that this isn't getting as much attention as it probably deserves?
Well, I'd like to think that isn't the case, but I have to conclude that it may well be a factor with some news organizations. I do want to salute a couple of people. BuzzFeed had an energetic reporter who's followed this case closely, and there have been a couple of other news organizations that have devoted considerable time and attention to it. But it really wasn't until after the slew of subpoenas that went out to the AP reporters and then to James Rosen of Fox News, where they, virtually used suspicion of violating the Espionage Act to get a warrant for his emails and telephone records.
Right, that whole scandal.
It wasn't until all of this came into place and people began to realize that Jonna Winter was not an exception. She was kind of part of an onslaught against the press. This administration, while speaking about the virtues of transparency and having the most open government, is actually very secretive. And as Len Downey of the Washington Post, hardly a kind of right-winger, wrote in a recent very thorough and very troubling report for the Reporters Committee, that this has been the worst administration since Nixon when it comes to treatment of the press. So this is strong stuff, and people are beginning to wake up. And I think now reporters and journalists at news organizations across the country are beginning to realize that they must pay attention to the Jonna Winters of the world.
Absolutely, and we hope it all works out well for. You talk about the administration and transparency. When they're not being transparent, they seem to blame the media, as we saw at the president's press conference yesterday, basically saying, hey, you guys aren't covering the positive aspects of Obamacare, and instead you're concentrating on the, how did the New York Times put it exactly, the incorrect promises,
The incorrect
Judy?
promises, yes. This is the grand euphemism of the day.
Well, no.
I mean, but in the New York Times defense, we have to acknowledge, if you read their editorial today, it was stunning. I mean, the New York Times has loved this program. It did not do a lot of investigation into how the program would work prior to the glitches as they began to emerge, as we call them. But they had a stunning editorial today, and as you may have read it, Stephen, which they said that what's happened with this rollout of Obamacare and the number of people who've signed up, and not just the website, but
how could you avoid it, Judy? Right? I mean, how could you avoid just what a debacle it's been? Even the New York Times can't avoid what we're seeing before our eyes.
But they didn't have to say this, which is what they said, that this was a huge blow to his personal credibility, and that they didn't know whether and when he would be able to get it back.
Judy,
that's very important.
That's extremely important. We got about 90 seconds. I want to talk about your old paper, the New York Times. They lost Brian Stelter this week. He's going to CNN. Yep. They've lost several top whether it be editors, whether it be writers. And I just wonder that if the old gray lady is looking a lot older to some of these reporters who are trying to make it their own kind of brand, and maybe, we talk about the Carlos Slim loan and the money that the paper may or may not be losing. Are we at a point now where what we're seeing at the New York Times and the exodus of reporters, that really digital media has won the day, and it's only a matter of time maybe until the New York Times is no more? About 45 seconds, Judy.
Well, I would hope that that's not the case, because I continue to believe that my old paper, my former paper, is an invaluable institution, and it is a great news organization. 1,000 reporters, editors, people involved in the production of news. There's nothing quite like it when it comes to foreign news. I have points that I can be very critical of, and I'm going to be in my book next year, but I think that it would be a great shame if the New York Times were not able to make its way in this digital new world, and if a lot of what passes for news in the form of blogs comes to substitute for it, because people need reliable, and I still think impartial. I'm not going to say objective, but a paper that attempts to be impartial.
I couldn't agree more. And there's something about Sundays and having that heavy New York Times in your bed is there's nothing like it. So
lighter than it used to be.
Yeah, that's true. Hey, Judy, thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate your perspective.